My spoiled sister took over my house while I was on vacation, and now she thinks she owns it. My sister and I never had a very good relationship. While we tolerated each other in childhood, as she grew into a teenager and started having some questionable friendships, we drifted even further apart. When we did talk, it usually ended in an argument and a lot of shouting, mainly because she constantly took my things. The bigger issue was that my parents always considered her the favorite because my sister was born with difficulties. She no longer has those difficulties, but my parents still treat her like a golden child who should never be touched, so when she took my things, I just had to let it go. I eventually learned to better safeguard my belongings, lock my bedroom door when leaving the house, and hide the key, not tell her when I earned money, and so on. Everything was fine until, approaching my 18th birthday, I often saw my parents giving me strange looks and having secret discussions with my sister, where it was clear they were uncomfortable and she was leading the conversation. I never knew what this was about, but I thought my sister was demanding a car or something, as she always had the habit of asking for expensive things that put my parents in debt. Unfortunately, it wasn't that. When I turned 18, my parents sat me down in the living room and told me they had something very serious to say. They explained that my sister wanted a bigger space, but they didn't want her to move out since she was a very fragile girl. So, they decided to make her room a bit larger. I asked them how this concerned me and told them I didn't care what they did with the house. Then they said that to make her room bigger, they would knock down the wall between my room and hers. I argued that it was unfair and that I wanted my privacy, and she probably did too, and that this was a terrible idea. My father laughed, looked at me, and said I wouldn't be sharing the room because I was being kicked out and had to leave the house within 3 days. My world obviously crumbled. I had nowhere to go, no job, and no support network. The first few years were tough. I had to sleep in homeless shelters for a long time, and during that period, I had no contact with anyone in my family. Eventually, I started working at a friend's company that I had met in school. Initially, it was all professional. In fact, I rose to a high position in the company because I dedicated my life to work, considering that I was there from Sunday to Sunday since I had little else to do when I returned to the small apartment I had rented. However, over time, my friend and I started dating, which evolved into a marriage, and now we are happily married. I started my own company, and my wife continued with hers, and we are doing very well. Finally, my wife and I bought a relatively nice house in a good neighborhood. This weekend, we went on a vacation to Portugal because we wanted to take a break. It was an amazing trip, but when we returned, we had a surprise. There was a car in our garage that we didn't recognize, and when we tried to enter the house, we noticed that the lock was different. I tried knocking on the door, and despite hearing someone on the other side, the door didn't open. I called the police, and after much insistence, someone opened the door. It was my sister asking me what I wanted. Obviously, I exploded and asked her what she was doing there, and she said she was watching television. I told her that it was my house, and she said it wasn't anymore, that she had already moved all her things in and removed mine, and our parents had allowed it, so I couldn't do anything. I asked if this was a joke, and she said it wasn't. The police officer had heard everything. He asked for proof that it was my house, I provided it, and without much questioning, he asked my sister if she wanted to leave and be charged with trespassing or if she wanted to try and stay and be arrested right away. After a few minutes of discussion, she left in custody. My parents called me, demanding that I drop the charges against my sister and give her the house because I was rich and could easily buy another one, and I should stop being petty. I just hung up and blocked their number. I'm not sure if I should really drop the charges against my sister after everything she did. I'm thinking about it, but I definitely won't give up my house to anyone.